All right, boys, here we go. The NBA Finals, we made it. My Celtics versus a Mavericks team that carved up the Wolves by halftime of Game 5. Luka and Kyrie are great, Mavs defense is great, and I am very scared of those two. I mean, hell, with Luka especially, like in that Game 5 against the Wolves, it really came down to if it's single coverage, he is making a tough shot. And if it's double teams, it's just, lively on the roll. Derek Jones drive. One time they doubled off a Kyrie for a score. Anyway, we have one regular season matchup that to me is like super relevant because it was later on in the season. The Mavs had PJ Washington. Anyway, in that matchup, I had two real takeaways. Number one was the Celtics with Porzingis, and obviously his health is massive for the series. Spaced out Dallas a lot in that game, and Lively was on Porzingis, and it resulted in like Tatum and Jalen having more free reign to attack off the dribble. Similar thing with Drew and Derek White. And the other big takeaway I had was Luka did basically whatever he wanted in that game. Whether it's spinning off of Jalen, backing down Drew, backing down Derek White, going at KP, dropping on screens. He blew by Tatum once or twice. Like, it was Luka being Luka. Going at Horford, too, if Horford switched on to him. And so, okay, let's start with KP. So, he's had about a month recovery time for his calf strain. And throughout this video, I'm just going to be casually mentioning him and talking about his, spacing and everything. So, I will say here, if KP's not able to move very well, then a lot of the stuff I say in this video is not going to hit the same. We know that this Dallas defense has, of course, been elite these playoffs. The Celtics would like to play 5-out. Dallas has already faced a 5-out team in OKC, and we saw that Dallas, they had Lively or Gafford playing off of Giddey, Wiggins, big Jalen Williams if he was in the corner, and they would occasionally zone up and all that stuff, right? Like anything they could do to keep their bigs in the paint to cut off some of the driving lanes of OKC, and then they would have PJ on Chet. Obviously, they brought a lot of attention on Anthony Edwards, and he was driving the whole thing. That being said, against the Celtics, again, in the regular season matchup, Lively was on Porzingis. That's different than Lively helping off of Giddey, Wiggins, etc. on OKC, right? That's different than him being able to patrol around the rim because Gobert's in the dunker spot against the Wolves. And all this applies for Daniel Gafford as well. We're going to see Kleba in the series too. And so my first question just is, where is Dallas' centers? And I mean, in the regular season matchup, they tried a little bit of Lively on Drew, but in the first half of that game, I mean, you saw times where Jalen's driving and Lively's kind of caught in no man's land because he's playing off of Porzingis, but then he's got to close out to KP on a three, and so it's Jalen to KP for a three, or it's like Drew, Porzingis picking pops, or it's like Tatum and KP run like an empty side action, and then it was either Lively or Gafford, I don't remember. Like they had to kind of go with Tatum for a little bit, which then leads to a hard closeout on Porzingis, which is a swing to Derek White for a wide open three, because the defense was kind of scrambling. But then later in the game, when they put Lively on Drew, it made it a little easier for Lively to help around the basket, but also it's helping off of Drew, and well, Drew's good. He can make an open shot. He can attack off the catch, all this stuff. Same thing goes for Derek White. Now, if Al Horford's in the game, okay, I imagine at that point, Dallas is going to be daring him to make shots. But this is one thing with the Celtics. Like when they are fully healthy, it is very difficult to pick a guy to put your center on to where he can be more of like a weak side help defender. But maybe Dallas tries it. Again, they did a little bit of Lively on Drew. Again, until Horford comes in the game. So we'll see with that. But look, whether it's Jalen or Tatum trying to get Kyrie on a switch, whether it's them going at Derek Jones Jr. or PJ Washington in a one-on-one, whether it's Derek White screening for either one of them and then getting in the middle of the floor and going to attack, like this Dallas team has been so good at packing the paint and then having like one guy from the wing kind of rotate over to guard like the dude in the corner, but still kind of stay glued to his guy enough to where that skip pass is not always there. And I can also assume you're going to see sometimes double teams on Jalen or double teams on Tatum, with the idea being like, if you're going to make that skip pass, okay, but we believe that we can rotate over to maybe it's Drew open in the opposite corner or whatever. Which I guess can now lead me into just focusing on Tatum and Jalen a bit more. Really, my biggest thing is I just don't want the offense falling into ISO-heavy stuff all the time. Like, just keep it up with the screens. I mean, I can't count the number of times I've said that I just want Derek White screening for either one of them, or either one of them screening for Derek White as much as possible, or KP setting that pin down screen for Jalen to get him on the move, catching the ball. Same thing with Drew. And speaking of Drew, remember when they traded for him and it was, well, he's going to be more efficient in the playoffs because he doesn't have to shoot as many times for the Celtics team? Yep, that's pretty much happened. Even with KP out, he's averaged 10 shots a game in these playoffs, compared to 17 as last year with the Bucks. Also, I'm assuming that Kyrie is going to be on Drew or White, and so having either one of them involved with Tatum and Jalen actions, trying to get that Kyrie switch. Like, Kyrie's been good defensively these playoffs, but also if you're just looking for the size difference, I mean, sure, it's inevitable that you're going to see sometimes where it's just one of those two running a screen action with Porzingis or Horford at the top of the key. And in the regular season matchup, the Mavs are actually not afraid to have Lively switch on some of those, which then opens up the whole, okay, well then it's a wing on Porzingis in the post, and I mean, PJ's strong enough to hold up on those, but obviously KP's been good at, everything for the Celtics this year. even if Luka ends up on Porzingis, like, I think Luka can hold his own against KP in the post. Like, physically, obviously KP can shoot over anybody. But yeah, back to Tatum and Jalen. I just don't want those two idling with the ball with like 10 seconds left in the shot clock because Dallas switched initial action and they kind of hesitated. What do we do next? What's the next swing pass or whatever? Because when that happens, then it becomes the worst habit of those two, which is contested jumpers that don't always go in. Let's put it like that. Now, as I say that, I mean, Tatum, he shot 37% on pull-up threes, and NBA.com considers that sidestep three to be a pull-up three. Post-All-Star break, so okay. And obviously, Jalen saved Game 1 against the Pacers with that insane 3 over Siakam, and also Jalen's growth on the jumpers right at the free throw line. Like, his growth on those shots has also been massive this year. So, I mean, they can make the tough shots, and obviously you're going to have to make some when you're facing a great team. So, I don't know. Last two things with the Celtics offense. Number one, need a decisive driving series from Tatum, because we see how quickly Dallas can close off those driving lanes, or he's going to have to cook on, like, floaters or whatever. Second thing is, the Celtics are going to shoot a lot of threes. They already take a lot of threes. They average like 43 a game in the regular season. And I do remember Game 1 of the Wolves series where Dallas got the Wolves to shoot 49 threes, which is more than they would like to take. And I do wonder just, is it possible that we see the Celtics' three-point attempts get kind of insane with the way Dallas plays defense? Now, as I say that, I mean, Dallas was second in three-point attempts in the regular season, but they've been a little lower during the playoffs. The fun thing about the difference between the Celtics and the Mavs, if you look at the Celtics, I have to do a whole lot of, like, try to get everybody in there. Drew, Derek White, KP, Tatum, Jalen, the whole thing. With the Mavs, it's like, can you guard Luka? No? Okay, you're in for a world of problems. Obviously Kyrie as well. Look, in the regular season thing, man, Jalen started on Luka. You got a little bit of Drew, a little bit of Tatum, and the Celtics did some interesting matchup things where, like, you could look at the beginning of their March 1st matchup. Tatum is on Lively, first possession. He's on him for a good amount of it. And Porzingis is on PJ Washington. And the idea there is that they can switch or even have Tatum, like, high up easier on any sort of a Lively or Gafford screen. And then the other idea, of course, is that KP can try to be a help defender off of PJ. But look, I mean, we've seen PJ Washington go nuts from three in these playoffs a number of times. So it's not a sure thing. You want to mess with the matchups that way. You want to mess with the matchups, try KP on Derek Jones, which would not shock me from Missoula. I mean, Luka's going to be ready for any of this. And obviously it's possible that they play him more straight up and then Porzingis is just on the centers. And so, like, okay, cool, that throws a different look at them. I still think Luka's going to find a way to throw lobs to Lively and Gafford no matter who's on them, even if it makes you more switchable with them. But the other thing, too, is, like, with KP on PJ, the Mavericks right away in the regular season, they went right to PJ screening for Luka or for Kyrie, and it resulted in Porzingis dropping. And so what you had was, like, Luka having airspace to go for a floater or able to, use the middle of the floor to do what he did against the Jaden McDaniels so many times, sort of get him on his back and then turn it into fadeaway twos or floaters or that whole thing. PJ had a couple of wide open pick and pop threes out of those screen actions. When KP was a little higher up, you saw PJ be able to get on the roll. But what you could also see there is Kyrie just potentially having daylight for pull-up jumpers all day, whether it's from three or for two. And, like, yeah, if Drew or White are on Kyrie, the screen navigation, I mean, those guys are obviously really good at that. But as we saw, especially in the Wolves series, you can play the best defense you possibly can on these two, and they're just going to make shots. And so everything we just saw against the Wolves with Luka and just whatever it was, Gobert high up, Gobert dropping back, Gobert hedge and recover, Cat high up, nothing worked, especially when he gets to the point where he's just making the step back three over whoever is on him, unless you're just putting two to the ball on him all the time. And yeah, that's just going to be a lot to deal with. And so whoever it is, I mean, Drew, I see the mindset around maybe Drew's got a better shot on Luka than the average guy, besides the fact that Drew's a great defensive player. He's very good at guarding guys bigger than him. It's the whole center of gravity thing, smaller guy who's strong versus, guarding taller guy, backing him down. But really, it's like, I don't think anybody can guard this dude, man. I mean, the best defense we've seen on him in the playoffs is Lou Dort when the knee injury was, like, clearly bothering him more than it is now. So, I mean, we'll see who ends up on him. Again, the regular season thing, they started with Jalen on him. As far as Kyrie, I mean, I think it's safe to bet that it's Derek White or Drew on Kyrie pretty much all the time. And I would guess 1 through 4, it's probably a switch on Kyrie pretty much whenever. Luka, depending if Luka's just really cooking certain matchups, I could see the Celtics trying to put two to the ball and not give him as much of a switch, like if he's backing down Derek White all day or whatever. And obviously White is a great defender, it's just, big size difference there. And then, of course, for Dallas's offense, I mean, everything just comes off of how teams choose to guard Luka and Kyrie and how much rotations they're forced to have off of those two, whether it's, PJ catch and shoots, Derek Jones catch and shoots, Josh Green catch and shoots. I mean, again, the regular season, the Celtics did have Tatum on Lively for some of those minutes, and so they're trying to take some of those lobs off the board. But with that said, like, if Tatum is forced to help because Luka caused a breakdown, you're probably still going to see those lobs. Although, speaking of Tatum real quick, I do think Tatum's all-around game gets a little underrated, but especially his rebounding for one, which makes you a little more comfortable in putting him on the center. I mean, we saw him on Miles Turner on possessions in the Pacers series, and I imagine you will see Tatum ending up on Luka or Kyrie sometimes, and we'll just see how that looks. But again, in the regular season matchup, Tatum was on Lively for a good amount of possessions, and if he's got to be a help defender, let's see it. I mean, yeah, he's not like Jaren Jackson as a help defender, but could still be big. Of course, we could see a KP on Lively as well, and Tatum, like more typically on PJ, I guess. I mean, if Lively or Gafford have to make a play in the middle of the floor, we know that Lively is better at that than Gafford is. And then as far as rotations and the whole thing, the Celtics are really good at defensive rotations when they don't fall asleep in Game 2 against Miami, basically. You can't have any of those games in this series. And the thing with this Dallas team is, they've kind of faced all different types of ideas with how aggressive you want to bring rotations, right? OKC is more aggressive with bringing help out of the corners. We saw PJ killing them with corner threes and big moments off of Luka passes, right? With the Wolves, in the early part of the series, they were more resistant to bringing help out of the corners, which lowered the amount of threes that Dallas attempted, but it gave more free reign for Luka and Kyrie to just kind of cook, especially Luka, right? And so then as the series goes on, they're trying a little more aggressive coverages, and just basically nothing worked. So anyway, who am I picking? Who am I, the Celtics fan, who would love my team to win the title? Who am I going to pick? I mean, listen, I've picked them to lose series before. I picked them to lose to the Warriors in the finals. But I think I'm going to go with the Celtics, 6 or 7, I don't know. Which means I'm picking against the Mavs for the second series in a row. I got nothing against this team. Was very wrong on the Wolves pick. My reasoning is, I think this is the one offense that can pose more problems for this Dallas defense than anybody else. Mostly because of the potential matchup things of just, it's tougher to put Lively on a blah offensive player on this team, or Gafford, than any other team. They did it to OKC, even though OKC is 5-out. I don't know if you can do it as easily against the Celtics team. And also the Celtics are just more talented offensively, top to bottom, than the Wolves are. So with the Wolves, it's we forced the ball out of Ant's hands. Now the Wolves are in trouble. With the Celtics, you could do that, and Derek White could go crazy off the catch, or KP, or Drew, you know what I'm saying. And then on the other side, I expect Luka to do his thing. I expect Kyrie to do his thing. Maybe I just believe in the Celtics defense to hold everybody else down a little bit more, enough to where even if those two do their thing, you can still survive off the back of, what I believe on the other end. So I will pick my Celtics to win the finals, and hopefully we all just have a good time.